1, 2,
3, 4.
It's working. Good. Hello, code.talks.
Hello.
What in Hamburg?
Nothing.
What happened? What was the last session all about? You're so tired? Okay, one more try. Hello, Hamburg.
That's a bit better.
code.talks feeling what? Way better. So welcome to our session. We can already promise this will be the most boring session of the conference. And it has to be, because this topic, CI/CD, automated build, release, test, should not interfere with your life. If this is a complicated and a topic that distracts you from work, it's actually not a good topic. You probably want to do actual work, I hope. Who wants to do actual work? Who wants to build CI/CD pipelines for living and doing nothing besides that like I do? Okay, I'm Neno, I'm doing this every day. Adrian does not do that every day. Let me introduce my friend Adrian. He's from the Republic of Ireland.
Correct.
And he has no idea about CI/CD. He's using it, but he doesn't know how to build a pipeline. He's a senior front-end developer, really good one. So if you need a really good senior front-end developer. And he's the ideal candidate to do this today because he has no idea how to build a pipeline. Hopefully I have, and together we will build a pipeline from scratch. Unfortunately, we have enough material for 3 full days, so we have to squeeze it a little bit and maybe rush through a few things. Nevertheless, we like to keep this interactive, so ask your questions whenever you feel like it. We offer 4 languages in which you can actually ask your questions. It's German, English, Croatian, and is it Gaelic?
Irish, yeah.
Irish? It's the official language, isn't it? Gaelic?
I'd prefer if people didn't ask me questions in Irish, just in case I don't know the answers. So.
You don't know the answer, you don't understand the question?
Bit of both.
Both?
Bit of both.
Yeah, so, okay, four languages to choose from. I think that's pretty decent. Yeah. It's good service, isn't it? What else? I told him that it's boring, yeah. Oh, we don't work for Microsoft, that's important. So we're independent, we have no affiliation with Microsoft. But then again, I do this for a living and Adrian does not, and that makes us a perfect combination. Last thing, we're the only ones between you and lunch, so we try to stick to the time frame, and you don't want to be the last ones on the burger wagon outside. That'll take ages. Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, let's talk a little bit before we go to your part, which is the actual pipeline creation. Welcome. The best seats are always in the first row. Exactly. You need a neck pillow for the first row. I think that would help. Anyway, so what are we going to do here? You will see us build a pipeline, and a pipeline usually has 3 parts. We have a build part, which is really the boring part of the boring topic. Then we have the deployment part, which is more interesting. However, it really depends on what you're doing. You could be deploying anywhere, right? To your cloud or not even a cloud or wherever you want to deploy to. It's different if you build a library or a website or a Windows application. And then let's assume you have a pipeline. It builds automatically, it deploys automatically, everything's cool, and it says it's all green. Can you trust your pipeline? Most pipelines I've seen, you can actually not trust them because they don't have enough checks to know if this is actually a good or a bad pipeline run. So I've been at a company and everything was green and they showed me like 9,000 unit tests and they did a party because they reached the 9,000 unit tests. And then I told them like, okay, you need to build more checks into your pipeline. And just to demonstrate it, I wrote a little script just checking that this one file actually exists on the OneDrive. Like, is that file really there, which I just copied, right? I mean, so simple. And then the pipeline said red and it failed. Like, oh, maybe I mistyped something, right? I mean, it can't be the case. Well, we discovered that their pipeline is actually copying into a totally different location and that all their testing in the last month was done from a wrong version. Every tool in the world will say everything's green because the commands as you specified them are green. It's like writing a unit test. An empty unit test is green. A unit test which doesn't assert anything is still green, right? So it's your responsibility when building pipelines to build a good pipeline, a pipeline you can trust, a pipeline that if it says green is green, if it says red, you know something's wrong. And this is what we're trying to achieve, obviously not in 30 minutes, which we have, but we have to try. If you're a GitHub user, just a short announcement here, you probably know that you have choice how you want to build your stuff. There's something new called GitHub Actions, which is now in beta, which is really, really cool. So if you use GitHub and you want to stay within GitHub, and by the way, use the same infrastructure that we will show you here today, you can just use GitHub Actions if you like betas. If you don't like betas, you probably might do something else. If you're more an enterprise customer, larger company, you have more requirements how your pipeline should look like traceability, you want a manual approval process. It's less about fully automating it and more about transparency in your deployments. Then you might want to use Azure Pipelines. And Azure Pipelines is Microsoft's new name for their build services that they use. It's a big, big infrastructure. It runs on the most basically most technologies in most clouds that you can use. So the name probably isn't the best because it's called Azure Pipelines and you can use it to deploy to AWS, to Google, to whatever you want, right? It's just an automation server. Whatever you tell him, he will do. You don't even have to build source code. You can copy files from A to B or whatever you wanted to automate. You can automate filling out some forms every day. So I automated one of my timesheets that I have for a customer. So there's a nightly build, opens up the timesheet app, fills in everything using Selenium UI tests. Every day I'm doing the same. And, click send, the timesheet is done. You can use pipeline infrastructure for many cool things, including building and deploying software. Again, it's not limited to anything. Most people like to use Git, but you can use whatever you want. It doesn't have to be GitHub. We will be showing you GitHub today, but it doesn't have to be. One nice thing about it also is the pricing model. If you're doing open source, if your source code is public, you can use it for free. You have 10 parallel builds running as much as you like. And if you're not doing open source, rather closed source and private repositories, you can still use it. I think it's 30 hours per month for free right now. And if you need more, you have to pay. Okay, we talked a little bit about the CI/CD already. CI/CD basically just means we want to automate as much as possible. And why do we want to do that? Now, half of the customers I talk to, they have automated processes in place. So they automated everything they can, and they say it works decent, and a release is just a normal thing that happens during the day. The other 50% of my customers, and maybe it's 60 or 70, they say releases, deployments are always a drama. It never works well. There's always something going wrong, somebody complaining, somebody unhappy, and it's disastrous. So because it doesn't work well, what do? They do less releases, which are then even more, they're bigger, more complicated, and they would most certainly fail. And they get into this vicious cycle of, not really having fun releases. So releases should be fun and boring again. So this is what I really want. And to get releases to a state where they're boring, you have to think about three things. It's people, process, and the tools. Last year here at code.talks, I was talking about people, I was talking about process. This year we will talk about tools and just show you the tooling side if you want to use the Microsoft infrastructure. Those servers you will see today is what Microsoft is using themselves to deploy their own cloud, the Azure cloud, for example, and a few other services that they run. They have quite a few services they run. So how would a pipeline look like at the end? So this is kind of our goal where we want to be in less than 30 minutes now. So we want to create a few stages. The first stage is actually where we build things. That's the build part. You have to modify this to your technology, whatever you want to compile, obviously, run the tests of your language, and run as many static checks as you have on the very left. And you see that those stages, the left stage is called build. They have one or more jobs running. And the reason why you have stages and jobs and then you have the actual task executing behind that, you don't see the tasks here. Those jobs can run on different machines, on different operating systems. So if for some reason you want to run something in parallel or on different machines, you would create another job for this. So the upper grouping is the stage and the lower items are jobs. Now, to the right of the build stage, you can see 3 deployment stages. So we opted in for a very easy linear approach. So you basically see a development environment, a QA environment, and a prod environment, and all those 3 do deployments. And once they're deployed, there's a web app to deploy here in our case. They will run some functional tests. In our case, that's a Selenium-based, browser-based test, checking that the website actually shows what it's supposed to show. Very simple. So that's how it could look like for you. Obviously, this is like a programming language. You have to come up with what makes sense for your scenario. This is a very simple one. I'm just trying to get you into this thinking of how you can build them using Azure Pipelines. Again, we will start the demo soon. If you have any questions, use the chance. How does a typical build process look like? Well, whatever you would do as a human if you are the build process. I had a company where the build process was actually a human. It was Dirk. So whenever they needed a build, they said, Dirk, build. And Dirk did the build. The problem is Dirk sometimes had vacation. So the solution was he should not have vacation. Unfortunately, Dirk also had bad days. Like he just forgot something. And then, then Dirk's not working. Okay, I'll do it again. Half an hour later, we had the next release. So it's all okay, but it doesn't scale well, and it's not good if that one person is not there. And I actually have quite a few customers that tell me that Dirk person existed and he's not with us anymore. That's where it gets ugly and where you hope you documented this stuff pretty well. Maybe he even left you with like a super nice build server infrastructure and nobody knows how to deal with it. I think that's 90% of all customers I've seen with you. Not as well? Yeah. Every company has this one system. Nobody knows how to manage it because somebody did. He's not in this company anymore.
He didn't leave any docs.
He didn't leave any docs. Why would he? He's a professional, right? Anyway, so if you are the human, you are the build process, what would you do? On your machine, you would create a temporary folder. You would grab the source code from your source code control system. You would then go to some compilation, which is, compiler, build, whatever the technology is that you want to use. Then you would run something like unit tests, so static tests, which don't require an installed environment. And any static quality tools you can find, code analysis, security scanner, whatever you find. And at the end, you want to select a few files which you will need for the deployment later and say, okay, this is the output from this build. They are called build artifacts, those outputs. You can have multiple outputs per build in Azure Pipelines. So this is how the build part would look like, and the deployment is really up to your case and up to everything else. That was all the slide part. I hope you're happy with that. Okay, here's what we're going to do. This is obviously GitHub. A nice repository. It already has potential security I can't pronounce this word. Can you please?
Vulnerability.
Thank you. I hate
You're
this
welcome.
word. Yes, it's a nice one. So it's a real project, as you see, because it has those security issues, right? We opt for a real.
Wanted to make it as real as possible.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Can you scroll down and just show us how this looks like, our project, and what we have in there?
Indeed.
I think we have 3 main folders. The application is the source code of the app. It's a Node.js-based, super simple app. There's a test folder. If you want to go in that test folder, let's have a look in that. We will see that we have 2 interesting folders, functional tests and unit tests. Unit tests is that stuff that can run on the build server. It has no dependencies whatsoever. Functional tests actually has dependencies. You have Chrome installed, Selenium installed, everything you need for a real test environment. It has to be a Windows machine in this case, and it have to be logged on as a user, so many things, and it has to run on a separate agent for that purpose. Okay, let's go up again. And here we have another folder, which is the ARM templates folder. That's now Azure Cloud specific because we want to deploy to the Azure Cloud. And that's basically the infrastructure description in one JSON file. If you open up the folder, we will see there's just one little tiny JSON file in there describing what we need from the Azure Cloud. It's something like Terraform if you want. It's just the native format of Microsoft's Azure. All right, so that's our source code. How about we create a pipeline for that? So let's open up. Well, first of all, we have to connect it with Azure Pipelines. And to do that, you actually have to go to the marketplace. You already told me yesterday you never actually clicked on the marketplace
clicked on the
link
marketplace
before.
button ever.
So if you never clicked on the marketplace link before, now there's a good reason to do that. So click on marketplace and let's see if you can find the Azure Pipelines app. Probably have to search for it, I
There's a
guess.
search bar.
Yes.
Oh, German
What is
keyboard.
that? Oh, yeah.
German keyboard. Oh, you switched it on me. Oh no.
I didn't.
This is gonna get confusing.
What keyboard do we have in Ireland, actually?
QWERTY. You switch the Z and the Y.
Yeah, of course.
And
that's
all the
it.
other stuff
Yeah.
at the side. There we go. Azure Pipelines.
You can change it, though, if you want. It's in the lower right corner. Just click on German
Let's
if you
do
prefer.
that. Let's do that.
So there's the Azure Pipelines app. I already clicked on it, and you can click on it as well. And you will see it's already installed, but you have to do this once in your GitHub account to connect this. And obviously, it will pop up authentication dialogues like 4, 5, 6 times to make sure you really want to do that. And once it's connected, your repositories can use Azure Pipelines. The reason why they do this connection is you can now actually get the events like somebody checked in and kick off your build. You can access all the source code. You don't have to do anything with personal access tokens or anything security. It's done for you in the background because you're using this app in the marketplace. All right, so since it's installed, I think now we only have to figure out where we can now set up those pipelines. And we can do that on another website. So if you click on the second open tab, I think it is, here we are. This is what you actually got created. And if you click on the upper left, there's a nice icon. It looks like a recycling icon, but it's not. The blue one.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is now another website that Microsoft runs where you can manage all your pipelines. So this got automatically created for us because we didn't have this yet. This is a so-called Azure DevOps organization. They created a project with the same name. You can click on the project code.talks 19. And in here, you can find your pipelines and create new pipelines if you want. So click on the pipelines rocket on the left. Nice. So I have one created already in case we run out of time, and we'll most certainly run out of time. Anyway, let's create a new one. Click on New Pipeline. Now you can choose what you want to build, and GitHub is just one option. You can use any other Git repository, Subversion, Bitbucket, whatever you have, Azure repos. But for now, let's use GitHub. And since we're still authenticated using that app, it should actually show us one repository. There it is. It's our code.talks demo. Yep, we can select it. And now it scanned the repository, and it's pretty certain that this is a Node.js app. So it already shows me all templates that have something to do with Node.js. If you don't want to do this, at the very end, there's a generic starter template and an existing pipelines YAML file where you can just select a file that you already have, and it goes from that file. Let's choose maybe the first one, Node.js template. So this is a very, very simple starter template. You can see that it first has a trigger. It triggers for the master branch only. Then the next thing is the pool. The pool is basically what agent do I want to use to run this build job on. You can choose between agents that Microsoft runs for you. So they have Linux agents in multiple versions, Windows agents in multiple versions, and macOS agents running in the cloud. So if you don't want to do anything on your own, you just let Microsoft manage it. This is the VM image that you select. Ubuntu latest means the latest Linux image that they run. The alternative would be to self-host it. So you have a machine, a virtual machine maybe, somewhere in any cloud or on premises, and you want to connect that. You can do that yourself, but then you manage the software on it. So it's more work for you, but you're also in full control what happens to that machine. You can download a small zip file, extract it, and install the agent. Well, the zip file is for Windows, and it's similar on Linux and macOS. All right, so and then the most important part is the steps. And in this very simple template, all you can see here is there's one task called node tool and another task called script, and it runs npm install and npm run build, which is probably how you would compile a Node.js app. And you just replace this with whatever steps you would do for your technology. The templates that Microsoft is supplying here are not really cool. They're really very basic. But let's see how this would look like if we build our own. So let's save this. We have to save it. We can, by the way, not choose a name for the file, not choose a branch. This is all not possible. You can only save and run. Run is also fine because probably it won't even run. Who knows? Save and run. Let's see what happens.
Save and run.
Oh, you now asked me at least where I want to store this. Master branch or another branch? Huh. Let's do master. It's okay. Let's screw up master, like in real life. So he's now checking in a new file, azure-pipelines.yaml, and he's actually doing that in our GitHub repository. So whatever we change here is actually stored in wherever our source code is. So if you go back to GitHub on the first tab, we'll probably see the new file somewhere.
There we go.
Checked in 24 seconds ago. Looks like it has worked, huh? Okay. Let's continue on and go back to Azure Pipelines. It's running, it's failing for some reason. Bash exited. Yeah, that was kind of what I expected, hopefully. Let's edit this pipeline. It's kind of hard to find where the edit button is because in every view it's in a different position. This time I think it's on the 3 dots on the very right. Those 3 dots in Microsoft language means context menu.
I don't see it.
And there's edit pipeline in there. It's the 4th one.
Got it.
Sometimes it's edit pipeline, sometimes something else, just to keep you awake. And whenever you got used to it and you remember where it is, they'll actually update the service. They will move it. So this, the times are gone with those boring times, 2 years, the same software. This is gone. You play this new game, where's my button? And obviously, this only happens on days where you don't need it, right? So it's, yeah. I even had it live on stage, by the way, that they applied an update during a presentation. So that the page looked different during it. That was fun. Anyway, so where are we? We are now in our edit mode. And on the right, you see a task assistant. The task assistant is very nice because it helps you so you don't have to write everything yourself. So you can either add new stuff from the task assistant or the stuff on the left that you've written already. You see that there's a gray settings overlay over line 13. We can click that and it will actually open the task assistant with those values so I can change them and it will, let's change it to 8x, I think it is. Let's see if that works. And click on add. With add, they mean update, by the way. It's just different form of English. Yeah. Microsoft English, I think it's called. Yeah, anyway. So that's the first thing. The node tool is, by the way, a helper tool to make sure you get the latest version and exactly the version that you want. In this case, we want to use Node 8. One more thing about the node tool. Can you change the version of the node tool we're using? There's an @0, which means we're using version 0 to 1. There's a newer version called 1. Yes, that's it. Why does it look so good? Oh, they renamed the tool. It's now called useNode, not node tool.
Oh.
How do you know that? Well, you figure it out, right? So just change node tool to useNode.
I'm glad you're here.
The best part is about that renaming, by the way. Use node, N-O-D-E. And by the way, the funny part is they renamed all the parameters too. So version spec doesn't work anymore. It's only version now.
Oh, okay.
That's for this week. I don't know what will happen next week, though. So we'll figure out, right? Okay, so this is how you go through the steps. And remember what I told you, we will trying to get our packages now as the first thing. The next thing will be to compile, run the unit test, and all that stuff. At the end, once we're done, we have to upload stuff. And to do that, if you just add in the last empty row, number 22, if you add a new entry, it would be a publish command. It's minus publish. And the publish command, wants a folder that you want to publish. So you can select any folder that you have. For example, we have a folder called application. I think it's a capital A, so if we run it on Linux, it will fail otherwise. There we go. So now we're telling it the whole contents of this folder is due to be uploaded here, and uploaded it to an artifact. So there's a parameter called artifact in the next line. Exactly, artifact, and you can give it a name. And if you're clever, you probably just use the same name, call it application. Otherwise, you will be super confused at the end why your folder names are not matching the artifact names. For every task you have in here, you can actually add another parameter called the display name. And you should really do that. Because today, you know what you've done. Tomorrow, you might not remember why you've done this and what this is actually doing. So if you look at the logs later, you will be very happy to see something like a display name. So let's add another parameter called the display name. And now in single quotes, you can put whatever you like, okay, I'm publishing, uploading, the output, application, whatever. Yep. So that's something you have to do to tell the build system, this is the actual output from this stage that I want to reuse at later stages where I can download it. Okay, super easy, isn't it? Whatever.
So you said.
Yes, I'm glad you listen. That's really good. Okay, let's have a look how this build process would look like if we insert all the missing parts. I think we prepared something already. So if you switch you can actually save this if you want.
Okay.
And just commit it directly to master to screw up our master branch. Okay, now you can switch from the master branch. In the upper left corner, there's a master, well, not so high up. It's in the text window itself. There's a combo box. It's the find the combo box game now.
Find the combo box.
Left. Oh, stop. Back, right.
Back.
Oh, there it is. And now you can see other branches we have already. And there is a branch called prep CT19 build. And if you open that one, you will see how the build process would look like if we have unlimited time. So we have the use node as the first thing. And then we use tasks to invoke npm. So in the Microsoft starter sample that we saw, they were just using a script and they were invoking npm. Now we're using a specific task called npm @1 version 1. And we're using this specific task to do the install just because it has some extra logic to authenticate against our servers, our npm internal proxy servers and everything. Then we run unit test. In this case here, it's using gulp. The tasks that Microsoft provides here are already aware of the test results. They can parse the test results and put it into the build status at the end, so that it looks really nice. And if everything is fine here, I think we can run this one. What else do? We archive file, right? Archive application. Can you scroll down? Let's just have a look at the last 4 things here. Okay, number 14, line 40, we archive files. That means we create a zip file from the application folder. It's just a matter of preference that we like to zip things before we declare them as an output. We could also output the whole folder. It's just a matter of preference. So we zip the whole thing, and we have to put the zip file somewhere because the publish command can only publish a whole folder. So what do? We need a staging folder. Luckily, there is a staging folder already, and you can reach it by typing $build.staging directory. So we're storing the zip file to build.staging directory, and then we're publishing out of that folder, and we are creating 2 more build outputs. So at the end, we will have 3, because we have the application, we have functional tests to run later with Selenium, and we have ARM templates, which we need to create the whole Azure environment. Let's run this thing. Yep, it's running the branch, looks good to me, and it will hopefully switch over to our build view. So the job is cute, you can click on it. It takes a few seconds though, because we're now waiting for the next available build agent that Microsoft runs. In this case, I selected as a region Western Europe. That means they're running in Amsterdam. All but the macOS image, that's only in the US. Everything else is in Amsterdam. Actually, do you know where I'm deploying the application to later in the deployment step? I chose the region of North Europe, which is the Dublin data center. Just for you, man.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Can you actually see the stuff on the right? Because it's hard to see here because of the lights. Do you see anything on the right? Yes? Okay, it's better from your position, maybe. Okay, so what you see now is on the left, we have this job executing. On the right, you see what is actually happening like you were sitting in front. You're obviously not sitting in front, right? It's a virtual machine running somewhere in Amsterdam. Microsoft is paying for it. They're executing the commands that you told them to execute, sending all the console output back to Microsoft's Azure Pipelines, and that sends it back to your browser, so it feels like you're sitting in front of the machine. It's actually not the case. And now everything's green. So this was super simple because it's a pipeline with one stage and one job working on one agent. And this can get way more complicated. You can add another stage now for deployment, and you can add multiple jobs. We will need multiple jobs for our deployment. Why do we need multiple jobs for our deployment? Because we want to deploy from one machine, from one agent, and once this is done, the deployment of the website, we want to launch another machine and make sure this has, everything we need for testing, the browser versions that we want to test and so on. So a 2-job stage is what we need now. So let's go back to our definition, to our pipeline. If you hit, no, that's a good one. You can click on the... That's a good question. It doesn't matter, I think, which one you click. And now the edit button is actually in the next to run pipeline. See? Keeps you awake. Told you.
Does.
Okay, now it's still showing you the master branch. We don't want the master branch. Let's switch over to... let's go to the final one, the deploy multi-stage one. So it looks similar, but now the whole structure is a little bit more complicated because now we start with stages. And our first stage is build, and it has jobs in there, the build job. And the build job has a display name and has its pool. So the pool definition is now on the job level. And once this is all done, you can scroll down. This is all the same build we've seen before. Let's find the next stage. Here, stop, go up again a little bit. Here we are. So this is in line 70, the build process is done, the build stage, and 72 starts the next stage. However, I realized that if I put all the commands in here and I have multiple stages, I'm deploying to dev, I'm deploying to test, I'm deploying to prod, I would have to repeat myself many times. So to not have to do that, I created something called a template. So now I only invoke the template. It's called deploy.yaml. It's a file also in my repository. It could also be in a different repository, in a central repository. And now I can supply parameters. And so I can tell it the different web application name. I can give it the stage name, for example, and the URL to test against. So we will have 3 stages with each 2 jobs created here, and they depend on each other. So show me this deployment YAML file, because I think the core logic seems to be in there, and I guess it's on GitHub.
Oh,
if you switch over the branch to the multi-stage one, there's a new folder called build templates, and you will see this deployment file in here. All right, so what do? There's a job called deploy. It downloads the stuff, the outputs that we need. There are 2 outputs we need for the deployment. This is the stuff that we just published in the build stage. We're now downloading into the first deployment stage. And then we're running a bunch of tasks. The first one is a template deployment to deploy the infrastructure. And then there's another one coming up. If you scroll down a little, we will see there's a web app deploy here. And stop. And then there's a second job, line 52. Second job called test, which runs on a different agent, runs after the deployment is finished. And this is where we will actually invoke the Selenium-based functional test, so browser-based testing. And at the end, when this is all done, we will see a test report as part of our Azure Pipelines views. Now, because we're using the app, if we were to create a feature branch now and we create a pull request, this build will automatically trigger as part of the pull request checks. And you can even make it mandatory if you want this as part of your pull request verifications. Okay, let's see how one of the builds is actually working, or how it looks like. I think you actually click on the finished result example in the toolbar. I think it's the 3rd button in the shortcuts from Firefox, the shortcut bookmarks thingy. There it is. So this is how it would look like if we run it. It takes like 11 minutes and we don't have that. So here's how it looks like. You see the build on the left. It's the first stage. It creates 3 artifacts, which are consumed by the deployment stages. And if you open up one of the deployment stages by hovering over it and then clicking on the arrows that just appeared. It's really nice if you have a touch screen, by the way, that you have features that only appear when you're accidentally in that area. And you see that we have 2 jobs now, the deployment job and the run functional test job. And if you click on one of the jobs, you will then actually see the console outputs, what it actually has done. Okay, go back one. Oh, you find the right arrow. Not too bad.
I'm getting there.
Yeah, that was a good one, isn't it? Yeah. What else can we see here? There's a test tab at the top. Well, there are different tops, but next to the summary tab, there's a test tab. Let's use this one. And now you can see our test results, which is funny. Everything was green and he still tells me I have 2 red tests. But let's just ignore that for a moment. The more important part is that whatever technology you use, you will get all your tests here at one place. So this is both the unit test that we had run and also the functional test we had run for all the environments on one place. And you can even do data analytics queries here. If you're totally bored and you don't know what to do with your time, you can figure out how often is which test failing and why and what you can do about it. Well, you still have to fix it yourself though, right? It's just telling you that something's wrong or weird. All right, as usual, we're running out of time. What else can we do? So the whole pipelines that we've shown you, we have it on slides. So just for you as a reference, if you download the slide deck later, you will see all the steps how we created this thing. You can then also download our YAML files if you like to use that as a starter. But really, it's that simple. Whatever version control you use, whatever target environment you use, you can use Azure Pipelines. You have to use YAML to specify your builds. It's a bit hacky, but there's a help file that might help you. It's the 4th link on the bookmarks toolbar, the YAML schema. That's the website you will spend hours on when you're trying to get this to run. The error messages are really good from this build server. They're written by developers, right? So you know how the error messages are. So good luck with that. But really the difference between a good pipeline and a less than helpful pipeline is how many checks you insert into this process. And it's up to you. This is like a programming language. Make sure to add as much testing and checks as you can. Use your favorite scripting language, something like batch files, PowerShell, Bash, whatever you're good in, and make sure to test everything you've just done that it really worked. So you deploy a web app like we did, send an HTTP ping and find out what the return code is. Just make sure it's really working the way you expected and it's not just telling you some false green thing. Did I miss anything? I'm sure I did. Probably. Yeah. Anyway, you can go back to Azure Pipelines, the second tab, and just show us what we got. Maybe just open up the YAML file. We can edit it and have a look. Okay, that's it for the short from zero to hero. We didn't type everything because we ran out of time, but I hope you don't mind too much. And this is, if you change the selector, the branch selection to the multi-stage, that's our final result. Here we are.